Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host Rashid, and we have a reoccurring guest. Um, I just can't wait to chop it up with him. I'm going to let him bring him introduce himself. For those of you who look at the show, you'll notice that he was on several times. So I'm about to bring in Mr. Charles Dunaway. How's it going today?
Hey, doing well. How are you, Rashid?
I'm okay. It's kind of cold down here, but I'm okay.
Oh, we don't have cold yet. Yeah, we still got a little warm here.
Hey, I want to go into something real quick because it's Liz Truss, the Prime Minister of Britain, has resigned, and this is something major because it seems like, as it's known on the YouTube, the Zelensky curse has struck again. Everybody who bagged Zelensky is either in turmoil or forced to resign, or their parties are just confused or whatever. What do you think this pertains to with Liz Truss being forced to resign? And she hadn't been prime minister but a few weeks or whatever after
No,
Boris
no.
Yeltsin was forced to resign.
Well, yeah. I mean, she did a number of pretty classic screw ups. I mean, the biggest one probably for her was while we're in, while we're having all this problem because of all the U.S. sanctions and
Hmm.
the EU sanctions against Russia. Now they don't have adequate coal and adequate natural gas and so forth. Now she decides, okay, it's time for the austerity budget. I am in the reincarnation of Maggie Thatcher here. I'm going to destroy social services. Like, no, this is just asinine idea. Uh, but yeah, I mean it, and I guess they call it the Zelensky curse, but I think it's really more the Biden curse or the neocon curse. I mean, it's really it's not a matter of the Ukraine. I mean, if Zelensky had been left alone, well, of course, if Ukraine had been left alone, Zelensky would still be a comedian. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking. but
Yes.
but he it's really the U.S. primarily that's causing this issue with because they're meddling in a country that's far away from their borders intentionally to try to disrupt Russia. And that's
Hmm.
really what's going on here. I mean, yeah, Liz Truss is she's a goner now. We just changed the Italian government and got somebody that, well, who knows. The French government is in trouble. The Swedish government just turned over. I mean, it's like the only people in who seem to be getting reelected are the people who don't support the U.S., like Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Hmm.
People like that are being reelected, and the rest of them, the ones that are following along like sheep behind the U.S., yeah, they're going down in flames.
Why do you think? I mean, let us just be psychologists for a second, and I want you to peep into the mind of the leadership of America and Europe, and why do they constantly? And I ask this question a lot. Why do they constantly double and triple and quadruple down on failed policies, and they sacrifice their national interests for desires of neocons and neoliberals here in America and in the so-called elite of the Western world?
Well, I I got a funny feeling that there's a lot of money involved somewhere down the line, but yeah, it really doesn't make sense from a political point of view. And I think what's going to happen here is that the 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 financial backers of campaigns in Europe, the big industrial giants and so forth, and the banks, they're going to have to like jettison this too because it's like especially in Germany. I mean, the German industrial base is shrinking rapidly, because of all this sanctions and nonsense. And yeah, but I think we cannot discount the possibility that since we already know the NSA was monitoring all their phone calls, of all these, that that perhaps there's a bit of dirt that we have on them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's it's a conspiracy theory kind of idea, but I think we cannot discount that. Uh, but I don't understand it at all. I don't understand it from an internal political perspective. I mean, this is going to kill their party. Uh, and like in the UK, for example, they intentionally destroyed the Labour Party a couple of years ago because the Labour Party was threatening to actually support labor people, working
Mm-hmm.
people. Gee, what a concept! And so they basically got rid of all the leadership, accused them of anti-Semitism or whatever, booted everybody out that supported Jeremy Corbyn, and now they have a Labour Party leadership, which is just basically going to be the same as the Conservative Party leadership. They're going to do exactly the same stuff. It just is they're going to talk different. It's kind of like that's the style of democracy that we are trying to push into the world. The style of democracy where you have two choices and they both suck. That's, that is basically where we're going. And there's. I think for the time being, they're looking at all the ties to the U.S., the economic ties to the U.S., the military, because the U.S. is I mean, we got a lot of military bases in Europe, and those military bases that's bringing some money into their economy, taking some out too, but it's bringing some in, and they don't. I think it's going to take some more pain. I think the Russians are going to be turning up the pain dial here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Mother Nature is going to turn it up or turn it down, to be more precise, this winter. And we're going to have. Well, I think we're going to see more of these governments fall. But the problem is that there aren't any good options available for people in most of these countries.
Yeah. And on that note that you just said, I was paying attention to what was going on yesterday, and I was looking at a poll. Now they ousted the conservative right winger Boris Johnson. Liz Truss was not even qualified to be a leader of a country. She didn't even know which part of Russia was Russia and which part of Ukraine was Ukraine, and did not even know the city that she was in when she was on a foreign mission at the time, which is crazy. But there was a poll taken in Britain yesterday or day before yesterday or something like that, and to show you the chaos and the madness in the political system. And we know that British political system is linked to the US, which is linked to Europe and all of this stuff. So there are dominoes that continue to fall. 6 weeks today, she has not even 6 weeks, she's been Prime Minister, Truss. And a poll is saying that 35% or 40% of the people want Boris Johnson back, even though he had failed policies. They just want her out, and which is so it doesn't matter that his policies fail. They just want her out. I mean, that's doubling down again. That's doubling down.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably 40% of the Conservative Party, because the way their system works, the only people who get to vote for Prime Minister are the members in good standing of the Conservative Party.
Yes.
So that's a very small number of people compared to the whole population of Britain. I mean, that's really a very small number of people. But who else do they have? I mean, they really don't have. I saw the poll too. I mean, the runners up to Bojo in the poll are not doing well at all. I mean, they're way down, 20% down from where he is. Because they don't know. Bojo is somewhat popular among people, I think. Some of the people who vote in Britain, but they got no good options. But that's true all over the whole Western world. I mean, we don't have any good options. I mean, we're in the same situation. I mean, and I think it's everything down to the state and local level. We're really devoid of options. We have to choose between two candidates who, neither of whom have our best interests at heart. Let's put it that way. Or maybe they do, but their solutions to the problems are unworkable. You know, uh, and it's a very sad situation for the West. But I think we've come. There's something bigger going on. It's hard to define, but I think there's something bigger going on in terms of the social cultural situation in the West, that we've got ourselves to a point where, yeah.
Well, think about this. As I said, they have no good choices, and you brought up, well, there's two bad sides of the same coin, and
Mhm.
but there's also sometimes a third pretender, which is like the so-called dark horse, or the the independent running person. Like let's look at Sanders in the United States. He was believed to be different from the establishment, as he put it. But when you look at his recent statements on Russia, um, and sanctioning people, he is no different from Biden's position, or no different from some top Republican hawks. And this is systemic in the
Mhm.
U.S. political system and the Western system, and maybe that the collapse of the Western political system is a good thing for people.
Oh, I think so. But we've come to a point too where it's not even possible to to disagree with the establishment position. For example, I mean, like you say, Sanders basically supports the war in Ukraine, although hopefully he knows better. But who in Washington does not support the war in Ukraine?
Hmm. Right.
Mm. All right.
Hmm.
I mean, we have, you have now and then members of the squad who make noises, but when it comes time to vote for more arms for Ukraine, or, bigger military budget, boy, they're, yes, sir, I'm going right in there. Yeah. And we've made it impossible, even in social media or everywhere else, to disagree with the consensus on pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have really made cancel culture our culture. I mean, you can't really, you know, you can't talk about it. I mean, if you disagree with the establishment position on pretty much anything, you're out there. And it goes on both sides. I mean, you find right wingers who won't tolerate people talking about, left wing positions, but the few people who are out there against the war, I mean, the only person on TV that's against the war is Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson's problem is he doesn't think that's the right war. He would rather have war with China, like, duh, not a good idea, buddy. Simply not a good idea. But yeah, the number of anti-war voices in the mainstream politics and media, just not there, just not there. And but how many people are talking against you know against capitalism, for example? Nobody's talking there. Oh, talk about climate change, but they don't talk about how are you going to protect yourself against climate change while running an economic system that's predicated on continuous exploitation of the resources of the world. Well, I
Right.
don't know. And then only reason we are going to have to do anything is to make money. So therefore, you know, you can't make money by making less money. It's not going to
But
work
how
like
much
that.
money is enough money? But how
There's
much money
never
is
enough.
enough money?
There's never enough. There's never enough money. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've got, we've come, I think, to a point where we have to halt and say like, okay, this has to stop. I don't know how we do it in this country, or maybe in some of the other countries they have a little bit better options. But what's going to happen? I mean, what has happened here, what happened in Italy, is that the right wing takes advantage of this, because the right wing says, okay, people. Did you see the Harvard Harris poll? I believe it was, that came out this last week, and they asked all voters, what are you really concerned about? What are you going to vote on? And basically, it was the economy.
Yes, yes, I saw that.
Right. And then they said, well, what do you think the Republicans are concerned about? The economy. That's what we think. What do you think the Democrats are concerned about? January 6th. Well, let's face it. I mean, everything in the number 2 and 3, the Democrats weren't there either. I mean, they have completely different concerns. And so what's going to happen? They're going to lose big, I think, come in a few weeks when the elections happen. I'll probably get to vote here pretty soon. In Oregon, of course, we vote by mail, so I should be getting my ballot in the next day or two. Not that I have any great choices to vote for. It's the same thing here.
Well, there's a famous saying by Gerald Celente, the investor,
Mm-hmm.
and the financial prognosticator, and he says, and this is a very, very pointed statement: when people lose everything, they lose it. And I believe that as the economy continues its downward spiral, and the government is no longer to mask it with the funny money bookkeeping and the off budget,
Mm-hmm.
off book budgets and stuff like that, and the threat of more war and the wars that you're in, I think as the people, as it hits home, because it's one thing for me to tell you something, and you could, like, maybe you could have empathy for me, or you can sympathize with me, but it's another thing when the thing that I'm telling you about is knocking at your door. And
Oh yeah.
I believe that once this stuff happens, there will be revolution. Revolution in the streets. I believe that people will be after the leadership for lying to them, and I believe they'll be after the pretenders who pretended, who did a good job of acting as though they were an alternative to
Yeah.
this and this,
Right.
and because one of my things is this, and I often say this because I'm neither I'm apolitical. I don't uh,
Mm-hmm.
get involved in this stuff because it's inherently corrupt. And it has shown that good people, or people with good ideas, when they enter the system, after a while, the system grinds them down and changes them, and not them changing the system. So,
Yeah.
and that has been proven time and again, time and again. But I often say this: when people of the left uh, hang their their hopes on Obama, or hang their hopes on Joe Biden, and people on the right hang their hopes on Trump. These guys came from the same political class. They all hung out with the same
Mm-hmm.
people, rubbed the same elbows with the same people. They got investment from the same people. They are indebted to the same people. So how can there be an alternative choice when, even though one may be talking different rhetoric, all one has to do is look at the policy initiatives of them, and you'll see that they differ very little, because Joe Biden doubled
Oh
down
yeah.
on Trump's policies.
Oh no, there's no question about that. No, yeah, it's, and you look at this. I mean, I think what the Democrats are looking at is their only thing is that they want to try to make sure that Trump is not going to run against them in 24, because if he does, he'll beat the socks off of them, because they won't have anybody. I mean, look at the field among the Democrats, and it's hopeless. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, really. I mean, none of these people. I mean, I'm afraid to say that Kamala Harris is a joke. I mean, and they got nobody else. I mean, AOC, give me a break. I mean, there's nobody in the party who has the national standing, and and even is halfway charismatic. I mean, Gavin Newsom, I don't really think so. I think he's not going to make it. I mean, there's just and so what you're going to end up with is we're going to go to the right because what the if you've got a choice and you're really concerned about, let's say, the economy, and this fellow over here is telling you, this economy, we got to fix this economy, we got to do something about it, we got to stop all of this, whatever, and then you have another person saying, well, did you see what Trump did on January 6th? And I think we got to worry about the unfortunate phobia against trans people. It's like, well, no, wait a minute. I'm going to choose the guy who's at least says he's concerned about the stuff that I'm concerned about. That's where you're going to go. And that person right now in most countries is going to be on the right. And what you're going to do is you're going to elect this. Now, they don't have any solutions. I'll be the first to say they don't really have solutions to any of these problems other than ones that really won't work. But, because their solution is the same as the Democrats' solution. Let's cut taxes on the rich and, spend more money on military and, maybe things will turn out better. No, and some of their policies are really very bad for people. But, I think people are generally going to go with that voice that's at least showing some concern for the same things they're concerned about. And that's what's worrying here, because I think there are in some ways, like on things like reproductive rights and, things like, police violence and so forth. I mean, the right wing is going to be very unhelpful, just put it mildly. But it's the left does not have any leadership. I mean, and in fact, I think that we should stop using the term left because there isn't one in the United States. There is no left. I mean, what you have is this sort of center right, Democratic Party, which is basically a corporate party full of warmongers, and there is no left. And what happens is every time there begins to be a movement that could be left, the Democratic Party rushes in and makes a lot of noise about how they support it. Woo, 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 yeah. And then, they just co-opt it. Or the big foundations come in and say, hey, you've got a real good cause there. You want some money? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, then shut up about this and that and the other thing.
I look at it like this. Okay, when you're talking about the political, as I said, and I tell everybody, I'm apolitical, don't care one way or the other, because the system is inherently corrupt. But when you have committed wrongs, okay, and this is the first thing, to make it right with a person, you first have to acknowledge the wrongs that you've done. Once you've acknowledged the wrongs that you've done, then after the words are spoken, action should be taken thereafter. Now, if America is truly, if the leadership, be it right or left, truly wants to prolong her time as a republic or a nation, first of all, she has to acknowledge the wrongs that she has done around the globe and that she continues to do and double down on. And after that, she has to make amends for it and remove the policies that helped push the military and the political class to implement those policies of regime change, wars, occupation, resource theft, and all. Because the same people who are funding her budget deficits are those people. And sooner or later, when they find a viable alternative, which is in the works, they will then flood the U.S. market with debt that she cannot pay, and the economy will go bottoms up, boom goes the dynamite. And in a position like that, when you have alienated nearly the entire globe because of your imperial hubris, there will be no one there to have pity on you when your population is suffering, when there's because a lot of people, if you've hurt them when you're in a bad position, they will do their best to get back at you. And I believe America has put herself in that position, and the politics only doubles down on the misdeeds and misdirections of the political system.
Of
I mean,
course.
political
Yeah,
class.
absolutely. But again, it's because we don't really have a democracy, because what we have here
Right.
is a system that's run by people with money and corporations. Like between the fossil fuel industry, the high tech industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and all of these others. I mean, they are the ones who drive all of this policy. Imperialism is basically a way for capitalism to sustain itself, because what you need all the way are cheap resources, cheap labor, and that all that cheap resources and cheap labor, comes from places like Africa, and South Asia. Um, and instead of saying, like, okay, we need these things from you, so what can we do to help you? No, we say we need these things from you, and if you don't give them to us, we're going to destroy your country. We will support some kind of wacko maniac who's going to take over the country and start killing people that don't agree with us. That's been our policy for years, because it's much cheaper than actually doing something to help these people. And frankly, if we started helping these countries, that cheap labor might become a little more expensive. They might start talking about, wanting to get a share of those resources for themselves and use that profit for themselves. And anytime that has come up in any country in the world since World War II, beginning with Iran in 53, we have quashed it, because we do not want people to use their own resources for their own benefit of their own people. No, because we want that stuff for us, for our corporations. And, the corporations who are raping and pillaging all over the world are the same ones who are, basically buying our politicians, paying for these expensive election campaigns that we have in this country. They are the ones who are going to block any kind of reform of the election system in this country. Because they're on top. I mean, they're not going to allow us to be undermining their gravy train. I mean, they're the ones making the money, and yeah, but a big part of this, I think you did hit on something. A big part of this has been this whole idea of understanding where we come from, understanding our own history as a nation. And I think this has gotten, unfortunately, messed up with this whole critical race theory, bugaboo, and the whole business about white privilege, because it's really not about that. We don't need to have those kind of ideas within it. What we need to do is just say, this is actually what happened. These guys like, Thomas Jefferson and, all of these people, George Washington, they did some things that were very good, and some of their ideas about starting this country were admirable and very, very much foresightful. But, they also did, they basically, just massacred Native Americans, and they owned slaves. And, I mean, we need to teach history as it actually is, because once you understand our history in our place as a settler colonial empire, that you can trace it right all the way through the history. That as soon as we stopped being able to steal land from Native Americans and and exploit slaves, black people as slaves. Well, what did we have to do? We had to start, taking over other countries. We had to start we had the Spanish American War. We had the Mexican War. We kept taking over other countries, and we got into the imperialism business, and we're still in it. And it's very, and what I think is very well. This is a side note, but one of the things, because people don't understand that history, is we get sucked into support for things like, for example, the war in Ukraine. I mean, the poor Ukrainians and these Russians coming in and taking away their sovereignty. Well, meanwhile, we took their sovereignty away from them already, like years ago, but we can't discuss that. And the same thing is happening with the situation in Iran right now. It's like, where are you getting all this sympathy for women? And, rightly so. I mean, yes, women should have the freedom to, to dress as they wish, and to participate in society. But do we think for a minute that this uprising in Iran is entirely, indigenous to Iran? Well, wait a minute. No, I mean, because we've tainted everything. With the money that we've spent trying to foment opposition in Iran to the Islamic Revolution. The money that we're these NGOs that we have over there that training these people to go out and to demonstrate, and we've probably got terrorists that we have already been co-opted, like the MEK and others in there, causing trouble, causing more violence. I mean, we can't really allow ourselves to be taken in by these narratives, like, oh, it's it's all about the poor women in Iran. Yeah, but no.
I want to speak on that and connect it with something else, because again, it goes back to the exceptionalism, the arrogance, and the thoughts of you are beneath me, because they focus like, let's go to Libya for a minute. Back before 2011.
Yeah.
Every poll showed that Muammar Gaddafi had roughly 90+% of the population in that appreciated what he did for the Libyan nation and wanted him to remain as the leader of Libya. But all of that was kicked to the side because of Western ambitions to dominate and to stop an alternative to the dollar. Because Robert Mugabe, the Honorable Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, the Egyptian leadership, and the South African leadership, along with other African nations, got together with Gaddafi, and they planned to have a continental currency called, and they were going to confederate the continent of Africa and make it the United States of Africa. And they were going to use the gold dinar to bag their economic endeavors. And this in itself caused the Western world to go insane because of the little to no resources in Western Europe. And so the Europeans and the United States had to get rid of them, and they play the same game throughout. It's racism mixed with exceptionalism, mixed with arrogance. And
yes.
And if you continue along this line to show no remorse, and sometimes you might say, "Oh, I admit I did such and such, and I apologize," but then you go right back and do something else, or you go right back and double down with another policy with someone else. When you are in a very precarious situation yourself, because at any time, the economy of America, because it's a house of cards. And at any time, the house of cards can come down. And when the house of cards comes down, then the military empire and the diplomatic empire, because they use those embassies in all of those areas to foment unrest and to go in to different countries and find areas that are dissatisfied with the government of that nation, and then they cater to that and give life to that and fund it so it can grow, so that it can destabilize. So when the debt situation becomes untenable, and the economy implodes, and the embassies abroad are forced back home, and the military bases are forced out of those nations, then those same nations will have a hatred towards you. They won't lend you a helping hand, and they will move on you in every area that they have the strength to move on you in, because they're remembering how you did their governments, their people, and ignored their policies and their national interests.
Yeah.
And there are over 200 nations in the world, and America is doing everybody, friends and enemies alike, like that.
Oh yeah. Well, and what you see too, I mean, I don't know if you've kept up recently, but now we have another Burkina Faso. We just had another coup. Mali has had a coup. Several of the francophone nations, they call them, in central Sahel area in Africa, are revolting against the French dominated class that was running the countries, and actually in the case of Mali, they've already kicked the French Foreign Legion out. They don't want this, and because the people of Africa are clearly understand what colonialism is about. I mean, they have been the victims of colonialism for hundreds of years. They know exactly what it's about, and it doesn't matter whether it's coming from France or it's coming from the UK or whether it's coming from the US. They can smell that colonialism a mile away, because basically what this means is that to them is that my resources are going out of the country, and all of the profits with them. Like, what was it? Is it the new leader of Ghana, who's now saying, like, okay, we're not going to be shipping out raw cacao out to Europe to be processed into chocolate. We're going to make our own chocolate, and we'll sell it to you, because we're not going to be, we don't get any money out of this resource by just it's no. I mean, if I have a cotton field and I just take all the cotton and send it to somebody else, for a cheap price, and I don't make any money. But if I can make clothing out of it and sell the clothing, in a nice department store, I can make a big bundle, But yeah, they're getting the message, and I think they're the other thing that's going on. Russia's in there too, reminding them that back during the Soviet era, who was there to help them when the colonial powers, who helped them overthrow the colonial powers in the first place? Who helped them always? It was always the Soviet Union.
As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, most people are not aware of this, but there was heavy fighting in a section of Ukraine, and it was called the Patrice Lumumba Highway. That was named that in the Soviet time because their admiration for the prime minister or the president of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba.
Yes, yeah. Now, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, the current president of Ghana actually talks a lot like Kwame Nkrumah. I mean, he talks about the United States of Africa as well. He's talking about the need for the African nations to bind together, and to take care of themselves. And I think that's what's going on. And the Chinese, basically, they're going in there and saying, like, they'll go into saying, well, how can we help you? Well, we want to build a railroad. Okay, we'll build you a high-speed railroad, so that you can bring your products to market or whatever it is. And whereas the U.S. doesn't do that, the U.S. says, well, we'll build you something that will help our corporations extract your resources, and but you have to have it built by our firms. You have to pay us to build it for you, and then we'll loan you the money.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to say this one second, and then you can continue your thought. I posted a reaction from someone in the chat, and this is Omar Sharif, and Sharif Omar, and listen, he says, you can stick a fork in this bird. America's done. The party is over. I also see Rashid, my co-host, in the chat. I'll bring him in just a second. He has been trying to get in the chat for the longest, and they've been knocking him. It's been a disconnect, and I was trying to. That's why you see me looking down and everything. We're trying to bring him up in the chat.
All right, let's get him up.
But Go ahead and finish your thought.
Your friend Omar is absolutely right too.
And,
Yeah.
I have to say this. I think Western capitalism, which they forced upon the world, is one of the greatest gifts ever conceived of. And let me explain. It's along the line of thinking of what you were just talking about. And I constantly explain this on previous shows or multiple shows previously, that this is what the Western world does, especially coming out of Europe, which is, I mean, now the world is catching up to it. But this was one of the greatest grifts. Three, as Rashid says, a 3-card Molly.
Mhm.
They come out and they assign a denomination to a piece of paper, right? And then they assign a certain value to your resources, and then they pay you for the raw resources, right? They take them back and refine them and sell them to you triple, quadruple, 10 times the price that they bought them for. And if you step out of line with the Western policies, then they sanction you and nullify the value of the paper that they gave you, so that they have beat you, they have robbed you without a gun.
Mhm.
They have taken your resources, refined them, and they're making money abroad and everywhere else. And you're stuck with just paper that is worthless because you can't redeem them now
No,
because you're under sanctions.
no,
And that's capitalism.
no. It is capitalism. Well, the French took it to you know, quite the level in Africa, where they said, not only you, actually we'll give you a currency that we devise, the CFA franc, and you have to use that currency, and 50% of your money you have to deposit in French banks. Well, like, in other words, they taken the colonialism, and maybe they took the shackles off of the people picking the resources, but they put a financial shackle on the entire country in this way, and so that there's no leverage there. And but I see Africa may very well be the source of the next major transformation of the world here, because I think it's going to be, they're clearly seeing seeing what's really going on in the world, and they have leaders in place who intend to do something about it. And I think, frankly, the U.S. is so overextended with all these wars they've started and plan to start, that they really aren't going to be able to deal with it, as they might have done in the past.
hmm and on that note, and I'll let Rashid chime
And,
in a
and
second.
hello,
But on,
Rashid.
uh,
How you
uh,
doing today?
but
Good.
but it's this. When we talk about that, and like I said, this is a 3-card Molly thing, and nobody speaks on this. I hear the alternative media, they talk about everything, but they exclude this stuff here. And this goes to the heart, what we're talking about right now. This goes to the heart of the corruption of the system, and these wars of empire, because the West, I would say capitalism, and those who are of the Western world are parasitic. The system is parasitic. It needs more markets. It needs more resources to continue to live. It sucks the financial life, and it's not just in Africa. It's in South America. It's in Asia. They do it everywhere. And one of the main things that I was getting to is that when they break the shackles off, they continue, as you said, the economic, but they continue a political shackle too. Because if you look, the French don't even use their currency, the franc, anymore. But
Yeah.
the Northern Africa, their former colonies, use the French franc. Um, and this is crazy. And just like the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, even though they're not they're supposed to be independent nations, if you look at the currency that they have, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, and all of these other, they still have Elizabeth on their currency, which means that this currency has to be validated by London.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is that especially going with France, that's exactly what the EU is. I mean, what the EU said, okay, we give everybody the same currency and the euro, and it's really nice when you want to move around through Europe, but who controls that? Well, it's all controlled by central banks in Germany primarily. you know,
Mm-hmm.
and and they're the ones who do it, and so they tell the nations what they can spend this money on. And like if you're in Italy and you need, for example, to deal with poverty or you need to build more infrastructure, you can't print money and send it out there, to get that job done because you don't have the lira anymore. You don't have any way to print money. That's got to come. You got to borrow it from the European banks, and they're not going to lend it to you. Um, and if you get in trouble like Greece did, I mean, then they're just going to step in and take as much as they can take of all of your resources, your public works, your water systems, your ports, everything else. They'll just take it,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to need that money to pay those debts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we really have perpetuated quite a system here, and I think too many people in the world are getting they're understanding now what's going on, and I think that's going to be the downfall. That and the other thing is that because of our desire to push Russia and China at the same time, what we're doing is we're pushing Russia and China together, and they're stopping trade in dollars. The Chinese are unloading a lot of their U.S. dollar investments, of course, because there's no point in putting your money in the U.S. when the U.S. can just say, well, I decided that you're a terrible nation, so I'm just going to confiscate all the money you got in my bank, and that's what we do. Look what happened to the Venezuelan gold that was in the UK banks. Gone. Don't be looking for that anymore. Uh, so this is we're actually our rampant greed and our lack of concern for the effect we have on anybody else is just causing people around the world to back out of our system. And yeah, it's only a matter of time. And then the other thing I think we need
It, it,
to touch base on is this whole thing with the climate change business, because what we're going to see now is more climate migration. We're going to see people from areas of the world where it's just going to become too damn hot to grow any crops. They're going to want to get out of there. And where are they going to want to come? They want to come north. They want to come to countries where they can make a living, where they're not going to die in the heat. Well, what's going to happen then? Well, we can't cope with what we have now. The system is so broken now that, we've got, I mean, I can walk probably not more than like 300 yards and find somebody sleeping in a tent along the side of a road,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and there we got to have thousands of people here in the city of Portland sleeping on the sidewalk.
And on that, something back to Africa, and because it goes to this climate change, and then I want to bring up a couple points that you just made, and then I'll let Rashid chime in, follow up on
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying, because I want him to become an active participant in this discussion also.
Oh yeah.
But as we were speaking on Africa, and we were speaking on Libya, and we were talking about the United States of Africa and the gold dinar. Let us not forget, and you just brought up climate change. This goes exactly with what I'm about to say. Canada and NATO and the United States, they kept tabs on the development of the aquifers that Muammar Gaddafi were having put in the desert, because a lot of people don't know this, that he had a survey done. He had a survey done, and the survey found that Libya had one of the largest, if not the largest, untapped water reserves in the world. And so he had bids on who could help bring that water, out. And a Canadian company won, and the Canadian company built the pipes, the aquifers, and what Gaddafi's plan was to take the Sahara and turn it into fertile farmland. Immediately, it wasn't 48 hours after the aquifers were finished that Canada relayed it to NATO, and NATO, one of the first things that they bombed was the water aquifers and the pipelines in Africa, destroying almost
Yeah.
the entire system that Gaddafi put billions and billions of dollars in to make Africa self-sufficient in food, along with economically independent with the
Yeah.
gold dinar. And on that, I wanted to say this too. A lot of people don't know this when it concerns Africa, and then we're gonna switch over to China, and I mean we'll let Rashid come in, and then we'll switch over to China and more geopolitics. But a lot of people don't know this, that is that we look at China and we say China is the manufacturing hub of the entire world, but we also forget to say this also, that China's investment in Africa has made Africa China's manufacturing hub. And anybody can Google this. China has become the manufacturing hub. Africa has become the manufacturing hub to China. And this is one reason why America is sent Blinken over to the African nations a few weeks ago, trying to beat out Lavrov and the Chinese foreign minister. And this never gets mentioned in any discussions. So
No.
I'm gonna let you two chime in on this, but I want to say this also about the currency, because you brought up something about currency. A lot of people don't know this about the Chinese currency. That India, even though India is a so-called enemy, which I would not, of China, um, India and Russia are now executing a huge portion of their trade in Chinese yuan. Right here, I'm looking at it. India's top cement producer is paying for cargo of Russian coal using the Chinese yuan, and they're paying for other things in Chinese yuan, and whatever they're not paying in Chinese yuan, they're trying to get deals in rupees and rubles. This is pushing the dollar aside.
Oh yeah.
You can chime in, Rashid. You can chime in.
Hello.
What I see is that the American leadership is not up to the past. Nixon and Kissinger were very sharp. They had they could see, in order to stay on top, to keep China and Russia apart. Now the leadership is in such disarray that they're pushing these two behemoths together, and that's their downfall. Also, their hubris, their arrogance, that they are on top, and that no one else is other than me, and I'm the greatest thing. That's what I say. That's what's bringing them down. Also, you were said before that the Venezuelan gold was in London. Why would you have your gold in somebody else's house? It don't make no sense.
Right.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this thing, getting into international trade, basically you have to have a certain amount of currency flexible so that you can pay your international suppliers and so forth and so on. But I don't know why they had that much gold in London. But remember, they had been run by dictators for a long time.
Yeah, it wasn't Hugo Chavez that did that. It was that
No.
other guy that did that. Took all of his gold. Once America overthrows a country, the first thing she do is go and take the gold. Ain't that what she did with Ukraine?
Mm-hmm.
When they got rid of what's his name, Yanukovych, the first thing they did was go and grab the gold and pull it back to New York or London.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And listen, but payback is coming. This is from shiftgold.com, and the article is gold migrating from west to east. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of it, but I just want you to understand that this was why China started their own Shanghai Gold bourse and exchange, because everything was run through London. London is the largest gold exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange is tied to the London Exchange, and the Chinese were tired of them manipulating the gold to like steal wealth and siphon off wealth from other nations. So the Chinese did, and the Iranians followed suit, and so did the Russians. So here's what Schiff says on here. It says, and this article is dated October the 17th, 2022, and it's by Michael Mahari. Gold is migrating from the west to the east. As Bloomberg described it, many Western investors, particularly at the institutional level, are dumping bullion. Meanwhile, Asian buyers are taking advantage of lower prices to snap up less expensive jewelry, coins, and bars. According to the Bloomberg report, large volumes of metal are being drawn out of vaults in financial centers like New York and heading east to meet demands in Shanghai, listen, the Shanghai gold market or Istanbul's Grand Bazaar. In fact, Asian suppliers are having a difficult time getting enough bullion into Asian markets. As a result, there has been a significant increase in premiums in many Asian countries. September average premium in China reached the highest monthly level for nearly 6 years. The incentive to hold gold is a lot lower. Listen, this is from a Western perspective, is a lot lower. It's going from west to east now. So hold on. So see, even in that, do you see because it's going to the east, the incentive is lower now. But when it was in the west, it was a higher incentive. I mean, the way they formed this, but a lot of people don't know that China holds a lot of gold, and they don't give you the numbers of the gold that they heard. They just give you a take of what they put on the books. They don't tell you
Yeah.
about the gold goes through Macau, through Hong Kong, and the gold that they mine that they do not. It's illegal to export, and the gold that they buy from China. Peter Schiff, I believe Gerald Salente, uh, Jim Rogers, and other financial pundits said that when they did an estimate, they believe that China holds between 30 and 40,000 tons of gold. Now, what's significant about that is this: if America tries to renege on the debt that she owes China, China can offset that with the gold and the silver reserves. And I believe that that's what they're positioning themselves for, because they see that America is unhinged. And I don't think that there's an adult in the room in Washington, D.C. with a mental capacity to try to right the wrong. They only, again, double, triple, and quadruple down on proven failed policies. Go ahead.
Yep, man, yeah, good point. And yeah, and I'm still laughing with Rashid what you were saying about Blinken going over there to Africa. Because we have really, not only do we have the most corrupt government that we probably ever had in this country, but we have the most incompetent government that we've ever had. I mean, every time Blinken opens his mouth, it pretty much everything he says is a total lie. What he will sit there and accuse Russia of doing what the U.S. has been doing, or accuse China of doing what the U.S. has been doing, but he won't really, he just nothing he says is ever factual. It's just like it doesn't matter. But I think we have, a bigger concern about this. I mean, if you look at the academy, the people that we're teaching about international relations and foreign affairs in this country, I mean, nobody's coming out of there with any kind of ability to understand a world in which we are not the global leader. They don't. They have no capacity to understand what it would be like, to know how they might proceed if they weren't in charge of everything. If we didn't have, a military that, in our minds anyway, could overrun everybody in the world. I mean, they just don't understand it. I mean, it's so based on American exceptionalism that, you can't get an intelligent appraisal of another way to operate in the world. And what we have, sorry about the motorcycle group, but we have, we have no way of understanding how we would operate. I mean, other countries, learn to have diplomacy, where they go into sit down with another country around the table, and they discuss what's in the best interest of each of these countries, and they both make some kind of compromises, and they come to a solution, and they move on.
we're not capable of doing that. Nobody has learned how to do that in our country, and we don't have those people. I mean, you look at even the people who are making some sense on Russia, like the John Mearsheimer, for example, don't make sense on everything. It's still predicated on the U.S. retaining global dominance, and because if we don't retain global dominance, if we find ourselves unable to steal the world's resources, is another way of putting this. Our capitalist structure is going to collapse. You're right, because there really isn't any. We don't have very many natural resources here in the country, and we've exploited them pretty much out. We're now, we have oil, but look what we're having to do to extract that oil. It's a very expensive process, and we're not competitive, on oil prices. We don't manufacture much of anything anymore, except armaments, and we can't manufacture them fast enough to keep the Russians from blowing them up in Ukraine. We're tapped out right now on that. And, everything else we make is not really made here. It's made in, Mexico and China and wherever else. I mean, our cars are not American cars. They're not made here anymore. And so what's going to happen is everything is financial. Everything is based on, finance. And once we don't have the dollar as the world's reserve currency, and once we no longer have the capability to grab cheap resources and force cheap labor to produce things for us, that's over. That is going to be a major collapse. And I think your friend Omar is right here that we might need barrels full of cash to get a loaf of bread. I mean, there have been countries that have done that before, and the crazy thing about this is that we don't need to do this. This does not need to happen. I mean, we could simply right now just say, okay, we're done meddling in other countries' affairs. Close those 800 military bases overseas, bring these people home, shut down the CIA, shut down the National Endowment for Democracy and the USAID and all this other nonsense that's basically been pushing for regime change and keeping our comprador elites in power in all these countries. And come back and let's take all this money. Let's tax the wealthy and the big corporations, and let's do right by the American people. Let's fix it so people have a good place to live, and they have good health care, and they have opportunity to get a good job and a good education. I mean, we could be doing that, and rebuilding our manufacturing base to provide good jobs for people. But no, we're spending $60 billion in a few months over in Ukraine. For what?
As we said before, that he's like a king that can't see what's the headwinds are coming. He's been on top so long. That's all he can see. He can't see anything. Like what you're saying, come in and help healthcare and all. The king, he ain't concerned with what his subjects do, just as long as you bring the money in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening with America. She can't see the forest for the trees. Why spend all of that money stirring up all that trouble? Because only thing he can see is to do trouble. If I do not do what I am doing, somebody else will replace it. That's what he figured.
But
and like what you.
But it doesn't have to be again that way. I mean, what we're doing also is we're assuming that everybody else operates like we operate.
But you can't get them to see that. You can't get the leadership to see that.
Oh no!
Us three can see it, but like you said, Blinken and Biden and the rest of they can't see that. Only thing they can see is what's in front of them. That's it.
I'm not so sure about that either. I'm not sure Biden can see what's in front of him. He keeps going the wrong direction. But and
You know, hey, can I offer something? Can I offer something on this matter here? And I believe something is missed about why America is doing what she's doing. And I understand what you're saying, Rashid, and I understand what you're saying, Charles. But we also have to look at it like this: the reason America will not stop, and the reason that those people in leadership refuse to stop is because even though they can't see what we see, they also see some things that the average person don't see, and they understand when they look in the books that as long as America had the dollar as the world reserve currency, she made the rules to the economic games, to trade, to all of this stuff. The loss of the dollar as the reserve currency would mean a leveled playing field, and without an manufacturing base, and drowning in massive debt and an economic social explosion at home will render America a third world nation. And the I believe the leadership understands that the folly of their policies continues to exacerbate uh, the situation that America in, but they're in a hole, and they're in a deep hole. And you know, you and I and Rashid, we say if you're in a hole, stop digging. But the leadership believes that if they can continue to dig, they can dig to the other side and get out through China. You know, that's
Yeah.
what they're believing.
See, they don't really care about us. I mean, this is the
Right.
thing we got to understand is that they don't care that there's, 100,000 people living, in tents along the streets in this country. They don't care that there's, millions and millions of children that are going to bed hungry every night in this country. They don't care about that. They don't care about any of that. They don't care about all these people, who are having to work 2 and 3 jobs, to make ends meet because, we don't have no more labor unions anymore. They're not strong enough to, and everything else. So what they care about are themselves and the people that, they are who are basically funding them. When you looked at now the Obamas, who left that little, what is it, 400,000 a year we paid the president, they left that job. She wasn't employed, remember, for all that time, for 8 years. So now they're buying these, multi-billion-dollar mansions on Martha's Vineyard, and they're flying all over the world and doing this and that thing, and getting their own shows on, TV, and it's Nancy Pelosi, the same thing. She's got, she's made millions of dollars since she has been in the Congress, where it doesn't pay that much, So that's who people they care about, and those people, as long as they can continue to fool American people around election time, first of all, fool them into thinking that the election has meaning. Do you see how many times right now, you were seeing all over the media, Democrats, especially, Obama now, and then now you have Bernie Sanders out there. Oh, you have to vote. You have to vote. This is the most crucial election in your lifetime. You have to vote. And, because the right to abortion is on the ballot. Well, the right to abortion has been on the ballot for a long ass time. You end up thinking about it. So what's your problem? I mean, it's like, okay, you wanted, and that's what they don't want these things to be fixed because they're good for fooling people into voting for them. But you have, as long as you can keep the people fooled and keep yourself in power, and keep this group in power that's paying for you, that's subsidizing your lifestyle, because these people didn't become millionaires just by luck. Money's coming from somewhere. And all these other people in government that leave government, and then they go get these cushy jobs on the board of directors of Raytheon and Lockheed and what have you. I mean, those are the people that they care about. As long as they can keep that game up and keep themselves on top, they don't really give a crap about anything else. They don't, it's the reason that
the reason that the economic situation, it's not that they care about the economy is not going to bad. They fear that the economy will get bad enough that people will get wise to their act and dump them out, and revolt against the system. So that's why they keep us occupied.
It is interesting that after you leave your Congress or president, or your money starts increasing.
Yeah, it is amazing how much money these people make after, how much more they're worth after a few years in those relatively poor paying jobs in Congress. Yeah. Well, Congressmen make some money, but they don't make that much money, and they got to have two houses, because they got to live in Washington and live wherever they're supposed to be representing. And
after they come out, they have mansions. Three mansions.
Oh yeah, and the big bureaucrats that head up the agencies. I mean, you think when people like Blinken and Jake Sullivan quit screwing up, in the Biden administration, making fools of themselves, they're going to get a very cushy job in some think tank or somewhere, or they're going to get a professorship at some big university where they can continue to spout nonsense, for another several years until the Democrats get back in office. Yeah, it's just a completely corrupt system. And
I think they may have overdone it. You can keep doing that for a while, but one day it's going to burst on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything going to fall.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's I think we have to start thinking about that. I mean, I do think that we're getting to the point where there's a lot of concern about our democracy right now. We're our democracy is under threat. Well, what we have the threat of is actual democracy, but that's a different thing. But but the problem is, if we were to have, let's say, a revolution, which I don't see in the cards for the U.S. unless things get a lot worse, which they could. But it's what happens afterward. And I've been discussing this with my friend in reference to the Iranian situation. It's all well and good to say, this is a corrupt leadership, and they're incompetent, and we need to overthrow them. Fine. Then what? Okay. Well, then what generally happens is whoever has the most power, and that's generally going to be physical power, police power, armaments, what have you, is going to take over the government. And whether those people are good people or bad people, we don't know. I mean, so like in the case of Iran, for example, I mean, they could overthrow the government, but who's going to come in? That MEK terrorist group, that's basically a cult around this woman who thinks that she's supposed to run Iran. Are they going to bring back the Shah, his son or whatever?
Son.
Yeah, and and then what's he going to do? Well, the last time we had a Shah in there wasn't exactly bed of roses for the people of Iran. So it's, you get into like, how can we actually take care of the things we need to take care of, improve the lives of ordinary people, and get rid of these corrupt, capitalists that are running everything. And the answer to that would be a left wing, a socialist oriented, revolutionary group. But we don't have any. I mean, there might be like 12 people somewhere in a basement in New York City, who think they are. But I mean, this is about it. We don't have any kind of a left movement that's serious about like changing everything. So
remember when they had that Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah.
The Obama administration came down on it like a a hammer on a nail. They got rid of them people real fast. They were talking about a fairer distribution of the wealth around the country. They're not going to allow that to happen.
No, but they were, that's a whole other. We could have a long discussion about the Occupy movement, but I'd rather not go there right now.
Omar, Reef Omar says this in the comments. He says, as America stirs up trouble in other nations, she cannot see the trouble running rampant within her own border, i.e. crime, poverty, corruption, despair, etc. You two comment on that.
Well, it's just like I said before. He considers himself the king. The king is not concerned with his subjects.
Right.
I ain't concerned about what you want or what you think. You do as I tell you to do. My deal is that I want to go and overthrow somebody else so I can steal, like you said before, have their country working for me for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and you look at all of those situations, and you can go right back to, you can get right back to there are two key things I think that happened in our history that push us into crime, poverty, corruption, and despair. And the first of all is the post World War II, CIA takeover of the government, where we're basically everything is oriented toward being and staying the world's number one power. So everything is about running the whole rest of the world and not about taking care of business. And the other is the election of Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, where all of the federal funding that was still there for such things as the war on poverty. We used to actually build housing in this country. We used to have the federal government actually used to pay money to have public housing built for people to live in. They still do that in Europe, in a lot of countries in Europe, and they don't have quite the problem that we have. But, we stopped doing that. And, because we wanted to make sure that there was some way for the capitalists to make more money out of that deal. And so, that doesn't work anymore. We had a war on poverty, but I think we lost. I think we just gave up. We've got, I look at this homeless situation we have here. It's like this is caused by the federal government having abdicated its responsibility to take care of the people. Why do we have, people with trillions in student debt out there? Because the government stopped funding universities and sent them into the private sector. And so, your basic university administration is just nothing but hustling for money. They're not really taking care of, they don't care about actually educating anybody. They care about how can we get more money, because we need to scratch. We haven't got any funding sources. I mean, we basically just in all of that so that we could cut taxes on the wealthy, make everything work for the rich people and for the banks. So yeah, we got all that. I mean, the rich people in the banks are doing really super well, but meanwhile, all of this other stuff. But people have to. I think we have two problems here. People who have just basically dropped out of the system quit caring about this stuff. In other words, this is all stuff I can't care about. The politics, they're all crooks, and there's nothing I can do about it. Really, so I might as well just buckle down and I'll watch my football game on TV, after I get home from my two jobs, and I'm not going to worry about all that. And then you have people who are, who are suckered into one of the two parties and are suckered into the endless blue versus red, pretend fight that we have going on here, which, whether it's going to be, we're going to argue about abortion, or we're going to argue about trans women in sports, or we're going to argue about any number of other issues, but we're not going to actually we're not going to get down to the business about how we're going to fix this economy, how are we going to stop having all these wars. How nobody wants to talk about that. That's complicated. I don't understand it. That's complicated. Leave it to the experts.
I want to also comment on something, but I also want to put Reef's next comment up because he's making some good points. And he says members of Congress get their salary for life after serving just one term, and they vote themselves their own pay raises. That's what you call parasites. I mean, they're parasitic. When it comes to the situation, I believe that poverty just that has grabbed the masses of the people. That's coming to a theater near them too, the congressmen and the congresswomen. Because think about this, Rashid and Charles said this earlier. They said something concerning the money that they take, all this graft money that they take, and they continue to build up their wealth. Well, what will their wealth be worth when the dollar is no longer the world reserve currency and have no more backing? What would that mean for those people who have stacked up all of this so-called wealth and this money and have no gold or no silver or no tangible assets? It's just like he made a comment in the first part. I mean, it'll be wheelbarrow loads for a loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
It is like what you're saying, that if they keep on going down this road, it's going to be a French Revolution here. It's got to be a bursting point where people just can't take it no more. And then like you said, what will they do? They have all of their money in them little bitty in those little communities and stuff, and you look around and the masses of the people coming after them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could happen. I guess it's possible, but do you see any mass movement toward revolutionary revolutionary zeal out there in the street? No.
Listen, let me comment on that. Okay, yeah. Listen. Again, I refer you back to an earlier statement and a quote I made. The reason you don't see it right now is because some people, the inflation, and the job loss and the hunger and the homelessness haven't reached them. But when it reaches their homes and you can't feed your kids and you no longer have the life that you used to have and that you no longer have the luxuries that you used to enjoy and the debt continues to pile on you, then it's a problem. To give you an example of what I'm saying and to show you, let's look at the political system. For decades upon decades upon decades upon decades, Black or urban America has been complaining about the corruption in the political system, right? They were brushed aside and said, "This is your imagination. This is not right." But as soon as the politics didn't go the way a certain class of people wanted, they beat it to the Congress and took over the buildings. Revolution, because it reached them. When it reaches you, revolution is in your mind. Then I got to find a way to eat. I got to find a way to live. I got to find a way to protect my family. I got to find a way to feed my children. So revolution, it doesn't look possible with the average eyesight, but there's so many ingredients in this soup of revolution. When the economy implodes, when there's more war, like when your children are shipped over to fight these unjust wars. See, we can protest until our children are forced to go over there, or when our children are forced to go to jail, or when we can't eat, or we see all of that stuff mixed with homelessness, hunger, a disregard for the average person by the government, the elected, so-called elected officials, the intransigence of those elected officials, the ineptitude of those elected officials, the dire situation that America will find herself in when the nations dump the dollar, dump her debt, and all of that inflation comes back home. That's a soup, a recipe for revolution at home.
Only under one condition, I'd say. And that is the condition that it happens pretty rapidly. Because I can tell you, I mean, when I grew up, Not to mention that I once bought a brand new Buick for $3,600. But yeah, but no, when I grew
Yeah.
up, when I grew up, my father, did not have a very good job. I mean, he was a barber, just trying to make it on his own in a little shop. He didn't have that much business. Um, but my mother didn't work. We owned our own house outright. We always ate good. My father had a new car in the driveway, and one old Chevy either. He had a Buick in that driveway, because he liked those Buicks, and he we would have uh, we had enough. We could go away, on vacation if we wanted to. We had money saved up in a savings account and all this kind of stuff from just one person's work. Now you can't run a family with two kids. You can't run a family with two kids now on one person's salary, unless that person's making like a lot of money, or that they are deeply in debt for the house or for their student loans or what have you. I mean, we have really the standard of living in this country, especially for working people, people that don't have, a college education and, a specialized job of some sort, has dropped, through it's unbelievable. I mean, the people that I knew that I grew up with would have jobs like, selling tires at Sears. All right, and they were making good money, and they had nice houses and they were paid for and stuff. I mean, it's like, come on, we can't do that anymore. Because that job pays like $9 an hour now, and you can't live on your own for $9 an hour, much
You're right
less
about that.
you can't make any kind of thing. Now, what happened there? Well, it was actually stolen from us over a period of years, but I mean, we, through inflation, through, the export of all of our manufacturing jobs, because there was just so much money to be made by shipping them overseas.
That's right.
All the other stuff. I mean, the infrastructure is really poor now compared to what it was back then. We've everything has gotten worse, but it's happened so slowly that people didn't notice.
But listen, we're at this point now that, and I understand that there were levels, degrees of the degradation of American society and the degradation of her economic. But listen, everything has a climax point.
Yeah.
And look, with the debasement of the dollar, no longer. See, when you were growing up, the money was still bagged with silver and gold. It's no longer that. You don't have the Glass-Steagall Act anymore, preventing all of this corporation greed and stuff. All of these things, and then you see the debt. America, just under Obama, America had more debt than all of the presidents combined. And then when it came to the president after him, we know who that is. It doubled on that, and I mean triple. And now it's doubling under Biden. And listen, this is a sign of a climate. You're working yourself to a crescendo now. Without and when you were growing up, America had a manufacturing base, and nobody doubted the dollar. Look at all of those pillars have been removed. The dollar is in question. The United States is no longer the manufacturing hub of the world. The United States is no longer the largest financer of the world. She's no longer the largest trader with the world. She's no longer the largest anything of the world. Matter of fact, the 5 top banks in the world are Chinese banks. So now when we look at those situations, and then we look at the debt burden that the government has, I'm talking about the on-book debt and the off-book debt. Gregory Manarino says that the bond markets, he told me personally on this show that the bond markets were, and listen to this number because this will blow your mind, were between $2 and $5 quadrillion. And when that blows, now mind you, the global economy is only $70 trillion. The U.S. so-called economy is only 20 some trillion dollars. Now, when you look at the situation, and now we're looking at farmers going belly up all across the Midwest. You see farms closing down, farmers selling their cattle and their livestock because they can no longer afford to deal with the weather changes or the banks that they're dealing with. The banks going belly up. We see more stores merging because now
That's right.
stores
Don't
are closing
forget that.
down.
It's
Yeah,
really only one supermarket chain
yeah.
out there now.
So
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
so you see all of this is building towards something. It's building towards something. And it may have taken years to get there. It's almost like with weight loss. It may take you 3, 4, or 5 years to get there. But when it's there and the whole world knows it. Because when they see you, my God, all at once. And it's the same thing with a revolution. You don't see all of the ingredients being put in the pot and being stirred. But as the temperature starts to boil, you start smelling what's cooking. And then before you know it, you're tasting it and you understand that you got a pot of something you got to deal with. And this is the same thing that is going to happen here in America. America is not the exception to the rule when it comes to revolution. She has to go through the same thing with the same ingredients that others. The only thing is she's the largest and the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world. So her trials and tribulations will be magnified tremendously over the other ones. That means that the people will have to deal with a situation that no nation in the history of the world has had ever to deal with.
It's like
that means go ahead.
It's like what you see over in Europe now, right? With this Russian deal. As long as he had cheap Russian gas, it wasn't concerning him, right?
That's right.
As long as he had the Russian, like what one of the economists over there admitted, the reason how Europe built up so rapidly was they had cheap Russian gas. Now all of a sudden it's not going to be there.
Yep.
It is a come to Jesus moment.
But
Tomorrow I might not have any gas at all.
It's not going to be there, basically because of the stupidity of the people that are currently leading Europe. I mean, they have to go along with the U.S. Whatever the U.S. tells them to do, and it's ridiculous. I mean, there's no excuse for that. And you look at our leadership is who would follow these people around? Biden and Harris and Blinken and Nod and whoever else we got in there. I mean, no, we've got complete idiots running the country, and we have had complete idiots running the country.
Wait a minute, excuse me.
Yeah.
They got a television movie with a bunch of idiots running America. Idiocy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the guy is the wrestling champ and one is the president.
Yeah.
A complete idiot. That's what it looks like we have.
Yeah.
And if we look at the situation in Europe, and it goes back to revolution. Look at the how they steal the wealth, what little wealth the people have out of the banks, and tell you that you can't withdraw your wealth. And now even in America, they're instituting these things where you have to get approval to pull your money out. You can put your money in the bank, but you have to get approval to pull out a certain amount. So when this thing goes belly up and the people don't have access to their money, a person will act a fool about his money. My uncle and my grandfather used to say, "You don't mess with my money, my wife, or my family." My money, my God, and my family. And listen, with the policies that are implemented by the leadership, we see that it's building towards that. And Rashid said something about how the foolish people in Europe they relied on cheap Russian gas, right? Now, here's the thing, that's killing the economy over there because they no longer can afford the Russian gas. But what's doubly killing the economy that most people are not looking at is that the gas that was bought by Russia to power their economies was to power and refine resources that they got from South America, Africa, and Asia. So this is a double whammy on their economies. And we're looking at the people, they're not putting this on the MSN, and this is what I was trying to get to at the beginning. When there's a protest in Africa, especially with a leader that they don't like, they put it across the news, look at this tyrant, this dictator. They do it in Asia. They do it in Latin America. But in Europe, the MSN and the Western media is quiet about the multiple protests that are across the whole of Europe and America. And there are dozens of protests that take place daily around America that the corporate media purposely omit and ignore. So the people are, don't tell me that revolution can't come when it's boiling and bubbling towards it.
Well, I think we might be seeing it in Europe because they have a much stronger history, particularly the French and some, as far as having revolutions, but there is something about the Anglo world that we just don't do. When was the last revolution in the UK? What, 1600s, with the Cromwell, I mean, it's been a while. And that was not real successful.
But now, when they got no gas, what they said, they just got rid of that woman that was in there. She resigned about an hour ago or something.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning of the show. We talked about that at the beginning. I want to say this right here, Rashid. Let me get to this real quick. I want to read what Omar put down here again because he has an excellent point again. But I want to go back to something. And here is the main thing that everybody overlooks about one of the main components of what the revolution that's coming to America shows. With the collapse of the dollar as the world reserve currency, that means that America can no longer fund her escapades abroad. That means that those hundreds of military bases will be shuttered and closed. That means the troops abroad will come home. When they come home, they will have nothing to do. They have been trained for war. When they come home, they will have nothing to do, no income. Their families won't be able to eat or enjoy the lives that they were used to. And that is revolution at home. That's one of the main components. Now, Reef Omar, he put this up and he keeps killing us with these good points. I like his points. He is killing us with these things. He says, in 1980, America was the leading creditor nation. By 1988, she was the world's leading debtor nation. Now, that says more than we can.
But now let me ask you, though, between 1980 and 1988, who was running America?
You brought it up.
Yeah, I believe it was Ronald Reagan and the Republicans that did that. And but again, what the Democrats have done is basically double down on it.
But like you said before, that they're really a corporate Democrat. The Franklin Delano group is gone, and then Clinton come in, and he's really a Republican light.
Oh yeah,
and that's what you got.
Well, yeah, he did things that Republicans could only dream of doing.
This is true. This is
true. And then but we've continually got worse and worse over the years. I mean, you look at it, as we were saying earlier, you look at the prospects we have for 2024. I mean, who are we going to get? You're going to get
the greatest wrestler. Put the wrestler in there. He do a good job than the rest of these guys.
Maybe if we can get the right wrestler, we might have some.
And what's funny about this is that they were even contemplating Dwayne Johnson running for president. The Rock. They were even contemplating that.
Why not? I mean, it's just good. Maybe Zelensky can come over here and run us. Everybody so much.
Yesterday, Biden, or the other day, Biden was talking about bringing back the American industry. How in the world are you going to do that? You just gave it all away.
Well, the big problem you have here is that you've got to have somebody's got to be in charge. Okay, and so you either are going to have the corporations are going to be in charge of the government, or the government is going to have to be able to control the corporations. And we opted for the former, because and that's where we are. Like, the military situation. I mean, our only remaining major industry is the weapons industry, the military industrial complex, and
they run the government. So what do they get? We get very, very expensive aircraft that
They
can't
don't
fly.
work.
They don't, you can't fly them in the rain, or whatever. We build these huge, battleships that really they can't float.
Go out
I mean,
about a month and they got to be dragged back into the port
you're,
because they
that's
broke
right.
down somewhere.
Yeah. And so what we've done now is we've now given billions and billions of dollars of these arms now that probably don't work. We gave to the Ukrainians who don't know how to use them, and gee whiz, it really didn't help them. I mean, who would have thought? And now of course, what's going to happen is that we're going to be told, oh, we're out of weapons. We gave everything to Ukraine, and now we need to spend a lot more money to build weapons, right? Okay, well, so I'm sorry, we really going to have to forget about that road out in front of your house. We won't be able to fix that, and we're going to have more homeless people living across the street. But I mean, we're not going to deal with any of those problems because we're going to have to build more arms because the corporate.
And even at that,
yeah,
the materials and a lot of stuff that they need to make these bombs, they got to get from China.
That's right. And it's the same thing is true as I mean, that's not the only industry doing that. Why do you think the government is about to mandate another COVID shot? Well, it has nothing. I mean, what? Here we have mandated vaccine that does not prevent the disease, does not prevent transmission, and so what's I mean, we all know this is to be true, but we still are going to mandate it again now for children. Why? Children weren't even at risk. We were told that earlier on. So I mean, but it's corruption. It's corruption all the way through, and but we've got people divided now onto two teams. We got your red team and your blue team, and it's if anything that the red team says is complete bogus nonsense, we must never do it. And the same thing is true with the blue team. They're all full of shit too. I mean, so you're all you
all polarized.
Artificial polarization that we have going on here, that is really it's killing us. But what it does do is it keeps people apart. It keeps us from getting together and talking about these issues and saying, hey, Rashid, there's a problem. We need to get together and get these people out of office, and get this country running right. I mean, we can't do that because you might be on a different team, or you might not be. You might not agree with my entire laundry list of things I think ought to be done. So I'm going to not listen to you anymore. I mean, they really did a great job. I mean, they've done a really great job of controlling the population here. And, but I do think you're right in that once we get to a point that it's dire enough, where people cannot live anymore, people cannot eat anymore, and we don't really have, as long as, and I'll be real honest with you, when the white upper middle class begins to hurt, then you're going to see some change. But as long as there's going to be as long as your basic, your basic people who as long as the white middle class, to be honest with you, this is where it is. They're the ones who really hold the strings, because they're really going to be hurting pretty soon. But right now, you go out here, they're going to the clubs, and they're going to the restaurants, and they're having fancy meals, and they went and bought another Tesla, so that for the kids, it's like, yeah, as long as that stuff is going on, we're not going to. But how much longer can it go on?
It's coming here.
Yeah.
I was talking. My wife was talking about my electric bill, and I stay in California.
Yeah.
Right. And she was saying it went up so much. I said, I had to tell her, what's going on over there is the reason why it's happening here. Your natural gas that comes out of America, they're getting to get taking it, and most as they can. The price are going up, and they shipping it over to Germany or over to Europe because of this crisis. Now it's hitting them, and it's going to hit us too,
Of course,
because and most people don't understand that. They just see on the news that okay, that's way across the world, but everything is global.
yeah.
If you
let me oh, go ahead. I'll finish that thought.
I said, if you got a resource here, if somebody else can offer more money, they're gonna ship it there.
Oh yeah.
Now look, on something that Rashid said. So I get my power bill, excuse me, a few days ago, and my wife says the power bill here. I said, open it up. And she said, at first she was looking at it and she didn't know it was the power bill, my name on it. And they changed the envelope or whatever. And so she said, hey, you have some mail. Then I said, what is it? She looked, she says the power bill. And so I said, open it up. Tell me how much it is. So check this out. I want to show you how it's really affecting everybody. So we were already complaining about enormous power bills that we were getting. Right now, mind you, in June, I went and bought a whole home solar system, and for my house. Now, when we opened up the bill was $35 higher than before I put the solar system to my home. So I told my wife, I said, what's the use of us even keeping the regular power when we can produce our own power and not have to pay a bill? What I'm saying is they are doing everything they can to pass the buck to the man in the mud, the woman in the mud, and so that they can continue with their grift, to continue with their with their charade.
Yep. No, they're gonna but at some point, like you say, at some point people can't put their lights on in their house, and they're going to have to.
Then it becomes a problem.
Then
that's a problem. Really.
But the thing is, we have to make a problem for those in power, and we have to make a problem for them, and a continual problem, one that does not go away when they throw us a little bit of a little crumb from the table. We have to make
stimulus money. That little stimulus money.
Yeah. Give it. I was reading on Twitter the other night because they were combining. Ossoff was going on about how he got that stimulus check right out, and somebody said, "Well, where's my $600? You still owe me $600." Yeah, but that's true. I mean, but what we did there. Well, I mean, I don't want to get into all that because YouTube doesn't like it when we start talking about the, COVID and the lockdowns. It's not good. But we can't fix these problems with these piecemeal things. I was just over in Ireland last month for on vacation, and I was reading the press there, and they're facing these high energy bills, because of the stupid sanctions on Russia, because of U.S. wants to be the ruler of the world, and trying to do it through Ukraine. But anyway, what are we gonna do to help about this problem? Well, we are going to give people subsidies. What does that mean? Well, in other words, you're going to get a gas bill that's, let's say, $500, and I'm going to give you a $300 subsidy. What you going to do with that subsidy? You're going to pay the gas bill. Who's going to end up with the money? The gas company. All right, them guys are already making top profits. But now what you need to be doing is you need to be nationalizing the gas company, and cutting out.
We can't do that. We can't do that.
I know we can't do that.
That billionaire won't like somebody to come and
steal
his
yeah, you got to cut it out some way. The only way you can do is, so what are you going to do? The only thing you can do is cut out the profit. That's the thing we don't need. That's the thing helping us.
And what you said, and that is still a grift. The government gives you money, right? And
Mhm.
they know that the money is going to go back to the corporations that fund their campaigns, right? And you're still going to be footing the bill because of your taxes. So it's a system that continues to suck the economic life out of the
Yeah.
masses of the people, and that can only go on for so long. And I just think about how they went into Libya. They called Muammar Gaddafi, and I'm going back on this, but I'm going back to this subject because this is an apt time to go back on it. They called him
Mhm.
everything but a child of God when they wanted to go in there and bomb Libya and wanted to kill him and his children. But he offered free health care, free education. When you got married, you got a home and a $50,000 stipend for and there were food banks just in case that your money didn't go as far as it was supposed to go. Free water, free electricity, and the oil and gas that was sold by Libya. Every Libyan citizen got a check from the oil and gas that was sold from Libya to other nations. And that was they
What it
called a
is,
tyrant.
what it is that most people in America would take that tyrant
And,
system over what we
oh,
got here in America.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
Well, and the
yeah.
most likely thing to happen is if we do have some kind of a revolution or a collapse, is that we'll get a tyrant. But the problem is, are we going to get a good one or a bad one? Because unfortunately, we're not going to get anything else. You know, but that's yeah. I mean, there are good tyrants and there are bad tyrants. I mean it, and it's this is what you know, we keep getting this thing, especially with foreign affairs. We get these nations. Oh, these nations, they want to be free, and these people can't be free. If they say something against the government, they'll lock them up. Well, yeah, yeah. So you want to make them free, but on the other hand, you're also going to make them poor. You're going to take away their health care. You're going to take away their housing. You're going to take away their food, but they'll be free. What does that mean? You
Free to
know,
suffer, free to starve, free to not
that's
have power and electricity,
I,
and free to die. But you got to pay somebody in your family is going to be footing the bill when you die because of starvation. That's the freedom that
I,
they're
I,
talking about.
I remember back in the 80s when they had a Russian come over here and was in America. It was on the news, and the guy was saying that he was saying that you free now, and the guy said free to be out of work.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I mean, this thing is exploding, and it is. And what I'm seeing is that uh, America's best days
Or in the
are
past.
in are in the past, and we're looking at the twilight of American empire. A lot of people don't want to come to this conclusion, but all of the
The
geopolitical,
signs
economic,
are
and
there.
scientific facts are
Mhm.
pointing towards this. And she could have halted her fall if she would have done justice. And without the doing of justice, you cannot hope to be given justice. And for her to continue, think about it. She with the mounting debt. I just want because a lot of people don't sit and they don't process this.
Mhm.
Even at this time in her history, when she's at her most standing at the most precarious state, she is yet trying to she's pumping weapons into Africa for destabilization. She has armed Boko Haram and then sent bases up in there and put bases up in there saying she's fighting Boko Haram. Then she's flying her ISIS people out of Syria, which she put into Syria from Iraq, and now she's flying them over to Ukraine to fight against the Russians. She is aiding in the as a matter of fact, she's the stoker and the creator of the Ukrainian Russian conflict, and yet she is continuing to uh, uh, provoke other nations, especially China, with Taiwan talking about now she's thinking about sharing weapons production with Taiwan, and then on the same tip, threatening the Asian Pacific Islands, saying that if you have a relationship with China, which they are closer to China than America, that this is unacceptable and that we would respond militarily in the midst of her still begging for money to fund her budget deficits. She's doing this. And in the midst of a debt explosion and poverty explosion and jobless explosion and homeless explosion within her own borders, she is yet threatening and stoking tensions with other nations right now. That's nobody that's deserving of justice. That's no nation that's deserving of pity or empathy or sympathy, because you haven't
She
shown
can't
any.
help herself. She can't help herself. That's all she know is to do what you were doing. I've been doing that for so long. I don't know how to do anything else.
Well,
Stir up trouble.
Yeah, it's true. I think we could have, I think there was a point we could have reversed course back in the, well, frankly, if the Democrats had not put Harry Truman on the ballot, and instead,
and that was something else, getting rid of Henry Wallace. That would have been a better deal.
Henry Wallace, socialist. Henry Wallace wanted to make peace with the Soviet Union and have friendship and take care of problems in America. And if we had gone down that road, but there's no way we were going to do that. There's just too much money to be made going the other way. But, and I still think that we could stop. The problem is that there not only is no political will to stop, because most people in the country don't really understand, how it is that we've, where we are and how we got there and what we need to do. But certainly isn't, as you were saying, there isn't anybody in the whole political environment in this country who would know what to do. I've been sitting here looking at, we've got races here. The big thing in Oregon right now is the governor's race. Well, you got three women running for governor, and some of them have the right idea about, like, these are they kind of agree on these are the problems, but all of their solutions are not workable. None of them. It doesn't really matter whether your solution is, let's just round them all up and put them in a camp somewhere. That's not going to work. But neither is let's just let's be nice and give them all services and where they are and try to take care. Well, no, that ain't going to work either. You're going to have to think about this and come up with a different solution. The main solution is that we don't have the money to take care of that problem, because the federal government is, it stopped collecting taxes from the wealthy, and it started, shipping all of our money to Ukraine and the military-industrial complex. So, and paying for all those damn shots people have been getting. But you can't, you can't solve these problems, and so we come up with, like,
excuse me, they can't give anybody some money for food, but then you can get a shot.
That's right. You can get a shot. In fact, we're going to make you get a shot now. And that shot, we're paying. I can tell you, somebody's paying retail for that damn shot, and eventually it's going to be you, because your tax is going to have to pay for it. Yeah, but yeah, it's nuts. There's nobody that really has any vision of how we can solve these problems. And the left, which I think would have normally, in my opinion, been the innovator, the one to come up with solutions, has been decimated in this country. They're really just, and now all the left is arguing among themselves over.
It really ain't no left. They, like I said, they're Republican light. As you said, the Henry Wallace group is long dead.
Long dead. And
what you have is a bunch of corporate guys. You got a light, and then people that's strong on this stuff. Both of them are right wing.
Both of them are right wing parties, and one of them is a little further to the right than the other. But again, this is you can't really get anybody inside the Democratic Party who's going to have real solutions. and they're going to have real justice and socialism. But now they're claiming it's all socialism. See,
if they did get somebody, as you said, they pull, like you said before, they pull a Henry Wallace on and get rid of him bring in a Truman.
That's right.
We have the we have the pervs in the chat now. I'm erasing. The reason you see my attention to this way, I'm on this laptop this way with, I have cameras this way, and I'm erasing the little perv comments that, instead of talking as an adult, instead of talking about something that's pertinent and that's relatable to people's position today, they're putting in all kinds of explicit stuff. And so we had that yesterday when we had psychological warfare officer Scott Bennett on the show. As we got into more of the what was going on, you see these bots coming in, putting in sexual innuendo and all that stuff like that. But I had to stop the conversation just to let everybody know that my attention is fully with you guys. I have
you do what you need to do.
And Reef, if you see it do us a favor, if you see it before we go off there, if you see it in the chat, since you have a wrench, please put them in timeout and delete their message. We would really appreciate it. Now I want to say something about the economics that you talked about. You said there's not the money, there's not the economics to do that anymore. There's also not the political will to do it, because if the political will was there, it would have been done. So that goes back to the not doing of justice, and I think a lot of people do not want to own up to that fact there, because if you own up to that fact, reality sets in, and I do believe that is a major part of why America is headed the way she's headed, because nobody gives her her leaders they don't do a introspection of themselves. They don't go into self and think about, why am I doing this? Why are we in this situation? They blame everybody. They're blaming everybody. It's Syria fault this, or is Iran fault? Now you have bases all around Iran, and Iran is telling you, listen, you're the one pulled out the JCPOA, and you're the one that's threatening us. And you got about 20, 30 bases around us. How are we threatening you? How do we have any bases around America? Yeah, did we pull out of the deal? And America said, and her allies are saying, well, there's no revisiting that, but we want Iran to stick by her agreement. So you mean to tell me you and all of the participants in the agreement can pull out, but Iran has to stick to the agreement? This is what I'm saying: the arrogance, the exceptionalism. And as Rashid said, said, the king, I'm the king, or like it said in that comedy, I'm the king. I'm the king. You got to do what I say. And that is America. That is exactly her leadership does those things. And then the media, or the scribes, as the Bible puts it, justifies it. Yeah. Or like when they fly a plane close to Russia's borders with Crimea, or close to Russia's air defense zone, and Russia sends warplanes up and fly close to their planes, the media was spinning and say Russia did an aggressive intercept of our planes.
No, but we don't have, there is not a major institution in this country that people have any confidence in whatsoever. Certainly not the government, but why don't they have? Why don't people have confidence in the government, or confidence in the media, or confidence in the academia, or confidence in the medical industry? Well, because they're lied to over and over and over and over again by these same entities. They lie. Like the government goes and tells a lie, and the media repeats the lie. Or sometimes the government will leak the lie to the media, and the media will print it, and then the government will say, look, we have to do this because this happened. They're just helping each other lie. And so there's no wonder nobody believes in anything anymore. But there are consequences to that. I mean, this show, for example, exists because nobody trusts anything in the media. I mean, if we had a trustworthy media that was giving everybody
the factual information, all of the sides of the, what was really going on, in the world, there would be no need for you to have a program because everybody would know. Everybody would know the truth, but there isn't that anymore. I mean, not that there ever was, but I mean, we don't have any, there's no confidence.
There's no water concrete on the news anymore.
No, that's right.
That year is over.
No, that's over. No, and we're not going to hear. And it's not just about. It's about everything. I mean, it's not just about foreign affairs. They've been lying about foreign affairs for like my whole life, but never tell the truth about that. But now they're lying about everything. They're lying about the economy. They're lying about, and this is the Democrats particularly getting really caught up in this. I mean, here they are. They're campaigning on, we're going to, you got to vote for us and get us back, in charge of Congress and the Senate, and then we'll codify Roe. Well,
did you see that video with AOC?
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you see it too?
Yeah.
I'm talking to Mr. Charles. Did you see it?
I saw it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting because, of course, she can't say anything about the war because, she didn't check with Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi before she could say anything anyway, because she wants to.
We call her the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah. So she's not going to say anything. And secondly, she doesn't really know a damn thing about what's going on in Ukraine anyway, because she's got full of the same damn propaganda as everybody else. But yeah, and then what does she do? She attacks these two young men because, apparently one of them used to be affiliated with LaRouche or something. I mean, it's like, come on, it's like, that's how I know anybody does. I mean, if I present an argument, let's say if I'm foolish enough to go on Twitter and present an argument, and somebody's going to come back and say, well, you're just an asshole because you did this, that, and the other thing. You used to belong to that group. Well, if you're attacking me personally, I know one thing. You don't have any arguments. You don't have any coherent argument against my point. Otherwise, you would have made it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, it's one thing for you to come and say, well, I don't agree with you about Ukraine because, and rattle off some facts that you have that might contradict my opinion. That's fine. I'd like to engage in that discussion, but we don't have that discussion because if you disagree with the narrative, you're a bad person. You're a terrible person. You're a fascist, or you're a communist, or you're whatever you are. You're a horrible person, and I don't have to listen to you anymore. You can't have. I mean, there's not a way to have a democratic political discussion, democratic with small d, when you can't talk about anything.
What they said was correct. If everybody is blown up, who cares about politics? If she had nothing to say.
No, they had an absolutely good point. But she can't answer that.
Hey, I tell you, Reef is killing it in these comments. I'm telling you. I mean, he's killing it. He said, I have a very strong feeling that there will be massive complaints of fraud and, I won't say that word, but stealing next month, because if you put those two words together, the algorithm will come and ban the show or whatever, but you see what is on the screen. And I have a feeling about that too. I want to say this too. I just got a message from Scott Bennett, but we got to have you back on the show. Maybe we can get you back on the show next week or whatever. And we can do a part 2 of this because the name of the show is titled "The True State of Global Affairs." And so maybe we can go deeper into everything that's going on. Yeah. And I also want to tell the people that are listening, we have a stack week coming up. We have Monday, we have CIA analyst, former CIA analyst, not Scott, but Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson. We have
don't miss Larry Johnson, folks.
Yeah, we have Mark Dankoff who ran for Senate, and he's a podcaster. He's also a minister, and we will be having God willingly sometime soon, Scott Ritter, and we have Jim Fetzer. We're gonna have Mr. Dunaway back on, so we have a stacked few days, few weeks coming up. You got to be here tomorrow. Rashid and I will be on same time, God willingly, if everything works out. If YouTube doesn't send a suspension overnight. And it was so funny. Before we go off there, I got to say this. So after the show yesterday, I'm in my car and Rashid hits me up on the he sends me a text message. He said, "Brother," he said, have we been suspended yet?" And it was funny because after every show, usually, or you witnessed it, we were live on the air, and they suspended me off the other channel. Charles, remember we were live on the air, so usually after every show, this show gets suspended, or we get a warning or something like that. And I'm on the freeway and I'm just dying laughing because I'm picturing everything in my head. So I had to call Rashid up, and we talking, we shooting the breeze, and we just laughing about the whole situation. But we want everybody to know that we're sincere. We just want to inform everybody of what's actually going on, because mainstream media, and I have to say this, almost 90+% of the alternative media omit a lot of these things and they only talk on certain points that they agree with. They don't talk on points that they disagree with, or points that may contradict what they believe. And so what we want to give to you is a entire picture of this thing, whether you agree with it or not. We want to inform you so that you can make an educated decision on what you can do and who to listen to, and what's going on in the world, so that you don't fall victim to the propaganda and to the elites plan to keep you blind, deaf, and dumb to the reality of today. Mr. Dunaway, before we go off there, is there anything that you would like to say to the people?
No, not just thanks for everything you guys are doing here. I think this is a great service you're providing, and don't miss Larry Johnson tomorrow. I can tell you.
And they said
about Ukraine. That's the man who knows.
On Monday, it's Monday. It's Monday at 11. He needs to come on an hour earlier than what we come on. We usually come on. One of our shows usually come on at noon. So we try to make it. You know how we do behind closed doors. We try to fit it around your schedule or something like that. But tomorrow we'll be talking. We'll be in the on YouTube around 12 o'clock tomorrow with a show. Rashid, any closing words?
No, everything. We just said a good deal of it today.
Well, on that note, thank you, Charles. You got to come back next week so we can do part 2. Rashid, is always a good thing to have my partner in truth, not in crime, my partner in truth, to go through the show with me. And everybody, always remember that we love you. We want you to know the truth. Stay strong, stay true, but above all things, especially in this day and time, stay righteous. I love you, but God loves you best. Mama. Peace.